Hi guys, 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 hi guys. Hi, and welcome back to ASMR with Rudy. ASMR with Rudy. ASMR with Rudy. My name, of course, is ASMR with Rudy. Just Rudy. And on tonight's video, we have a very special ASMR reading with Rudy. And I have chosen George Orwell's 1984. For those of you who've watched my sort of like book showcase ASMR video, you would recognize this book from there. It has lovely golden pages top to bottom, this wonderful red bookmark thingy, and a beautiful cover to go with it. I will read the blurb first, tap on it a little bit, and we will read a couple of pages on tonight's video. So sit back, do relax, keep this on the side, let it play, or just make sure to get in a cozy blanket if you're gonna go to bed. Make sure to brush your teeth, take your medicine, whatever it is that you need to do before bedtime, and yeah, grab a cup of water, tea, whatever drink of your preference, or if you don't want to have anything, that's also okay. Do whatever it is to get yourself comfortable, and let's start with the video. Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. Dark, quite dark, but that is the theme of this book. And I don't know why I've chosen to read it, but I felt like I've been delaying the reading of this book for a while, like personally. So this is my way of getting into it, like reading it. Because I have a lot of books that I haven't been able to read, so I thought this would be the perfect way to kind of get into it again, reading. Some lovely art on the inside. There is a little author's information page, but I will not be reading that tonight. We will skip straight ahead to the there's a preface, although I do not know if I should read that. Okay, I think I'll skip the preface as well. I'm just going to go to part 1 of 1984 by George Orwell. Let us begin. It was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. The hallway smelt of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. At one end of it, a colored poster, too large for indoor display, had been tackled to the wall. It depicted simply an enormous face, more than a meter wide, the face of a man of about 45, with a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features. Winston made for the stairs. It was of no use trying the lift. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working, and at present the electric current was cut off during daylight hours. It was part of the economy drive in preparation for Hate Week. The flat was 7 flights up, and Winston, who was 39, had a varicose ulcer above his right ankle, went slowly, resting several times on the way. On each landing opposite the lift shaft, the poster with the enormous face gazed from the wall. Or am I reading that right? Let me just check back. Yeah. The poster with the enormous face gazed from the wall. It was one of those pictures which are so contrived that the eyes follow you about when you move. Big Brother is watching you, the caption beneath it ran. Inside the flat, a fruity voice was reading out a list of figures which had something to do with the production of pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal plaque, like a dulled mirror which formed part of the surface of the right-hand wall. Winston turned the switch and the voice sank somewhat, though the words were still distinguishable. The instrument, the telescreen, as it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. He moved over to the window, a smallish, frail figure, the meagerness of his body merely emphasized by the blue overalls which were the uniform of the party. His hair was very fair, his face naturally sanguine, his skin roughened by a coarse soap and blunt razor blades at the cold of the winter that had just ended. Outside, even through the shut window pane, the world looked cold. Down in the street, little eddies of wind were whirling dust and torn paper into spirals, and though the sun was shining and the sky a harsh blue, there seemed to be no color in anything, except the posters that were plastered everywhere. The black mustachioed face gazed down from every commanding corner. There was one of those house front immediately. No, I'm sorry. There was one on the house front immediately opposite. Big Brother is watching you, the caption said, while the dark eyes looked deep into Winston's own. Down at street level, another poster, torn at one corner, flapped fitfully in the wind, alternate covering and uncovering the single word Ingsoc, Ingsoc. In the far distance, a helicopter skimmed down between the roofs, hovered for an instant like a blue bottle, and darted away again with a curving flight. It was the police patrol snooping into people's windows. The patrols did not matter, however. Only the thought police mattered. Behind Winston's back, the voice from the telescreen was still babbling away about pig iron and the overfulfillment of the ninth three-year plan. The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. Any sound that Winston made above the level of a very low whisper would be picked up by it. Moreover, so long as he remained within the field of vision which the metal plaque commanded, he could be seen as well as be heard. There was, of course, no way of knowing whether you were being watched at any given moment. How often or on what system the thought police plugged in on any individual wire was guesswork. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody all the time. Yeah. My bad, it's been a while since I've read anything, and so it is admittedly a little challenging at times to be reading aloud itself when I don't read itself to begin with. Anyway, I will pick back up from where we left off, but I'll just retrace our steps again. Okay. How often or on what system the thought police plugged in on any individual wire was guesswork. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody all the time, but at any rate they could plug in your wire whenever they wanted to. You had to did live from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard, and except in darkness, every movement scrutinized. Winston kept his back turned to the telescreen. It was safer though, as he well knew, even a back can be revealing. A kilometer away, the Ministry of Truth, his place of work, towered vast and white above the grimy landscape. This, he thought with a sort of vague distaste, this was London, chief city of Airstrip 1, itself the third most populous of the provinces of Oceania. I'm sorry, that's Oceania, not Oceania. Yeah. He tried to squeeze out some childhood memory that should tell him whether London had always been quite like this. Were there always these vistas of rotting 19th century houses, their sides shored up with baulks of timber, their windows patched with cardboard and their roofs with corrugated iron, their crazy gardens walls sagging in all directions? And the bombed sites where the plaster dust swirled in the air and the willow herb straggled over the heaps of rubble, and the places where the bombs had cleared a larger patch and there had sprung up sordid colonies of wooden dwellings like chicken houses? But it was of no use. He could not remember. Nothing remained of his childhood except a series of bright lit tableaux occurring against no background, and mostly unintelligible. The Ministry of Truth, Mini-True, in Newspeak. There's an asterisk after Newspeak. Newspeak was the official language of Oceania. For an account of its structure and etymology, see appendix. Alright, we will come to that if required. Anyway, the Ministry of Truth, Mini-True in Newspeak, was startlingly different from any other object in sight. It was an enormous pyramidal. I'm sorry, I've lost it again. Let me just retrace. The Ministry of Truth, Mini-True in Newspeak, was startlingly different from any other object in sight. It was an enormous pyramidal structure of glittering white concrete, soaring up terrace after terrace, 300 meters into the air. From where Winston stood, it was just possible to read, picked out on its white face in elegant writing, the three slogans of the party. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The Ministry of Truth contained, it was said, 3,000 rooms above ground level, and corresponding ramifications below. Scattered about London, there were just 3 other buildings of similar appearance and size. So completely did they dwarf the surrounding architecture that from the roof of Victory mansions you could see all 4 of them simultaneously. They were the homes of the 4 ministries between which entire apparatus of government was divided. The Ministry of Truth, which concerned itself with news, entertainment, education, and fine arts. The Ministry of Peace, which concerned itself with the war. The Ministry of Love, which maintained law and order. And the Ministry of Plenty, which was responsible for economic affairs. Their names in newspeak: Mini True, Mini Pax, Mini Love, and Mini Plenty. The Ministry of Love was the really frightening one. There were no windows in it at all. Sorry about the noise. There were no windows in it at all. Winston had never been inside the Ministry of Love, nor within half a kilometer of it. It was a place impossible to enter except on official business, and then only by penetrating through a maze of barbed wire entanglements, steel doors, and hidden machine gun nests. Even the street leading up to its outer barriers were roamed by gorilla-faced guards in black uniforms, armed with jointed truncheons. Winston turned around abruptly. He had set his features into the expression of quiet optimism, which it was as advisable. I'm terribly sorry. This is my first time reading in a long time, and I'm having a bit of a brain fog. I'll start again. Winston turned around abruptly. He had set his features into the expression of quiet optimism, which was advisable to wear when facing the telescreen. He crossed the room into the tiny kitchen. By leaving the ministry at this time of the day, he had sacrificed his lunch in the canteen, and he was aware that there was no food in the kitchen except a hunk of dark-colored bread, which had got to be saved for tomorrow's breakfast. He took down from the shelf a bottle of colorless liquid with a plain white label marked Victory Gin. It gave off a sickly, oily smell, as of Chinese rice spirit. Winston poured out nearly a teacupful, nerved himself for a shot, and gulped it down like a dose of medicine. That doesn't sound very tasty. I had to edit some parts out, so I'm picking right up after reading the part where he just drank the strange Victory gin. So instantly his face turned scarlet and the water ran out of his eyes. The stuff was like nitric acid, and moreover, in swallowing it, one had the sensation of being hit on the back with a rubber club. The next moment, however, the burning in his belly died down and the world began to look a lot more cheerful. He took a cigarette down from a crumpled packet marked Victory Cigarettes and incautiously held it upright, whereupon the tobacco fell out on the floor. With the next one, he was more successful. He went back to the living room and sat down at a small table that stood to the left of the telescreen. From the table drawer, he took out a pen holder, a bottle of ink, and a thick quarter-sized blank book with a red back and a marbled cover. Red back, eh? For some reason, the telescreen in the living room was in an unusual position. Instead of being placed, as was normal, in the end wall where it could command the whole room, it was in the longer wall, opposite the window. To one side of it, there was a shallow alcove in which Winston was now sitting, and which, when the flats were built, had probably been intended to hold bookshelves. By sitting in the alcove and keeping wall back, Winston was able to remain outside the range of the telescreen, so far as sight went. He could be heard, of course, but so long as he stayed in his present position, he could not be seen. It was partly the unusual geography of the room that had suggested to him the thing that he was now about to do. But it had also been suggested by the book that he had just taken out of the drawer. It was a peculiarly beautiful book. Its smooth, creamy paper, a little yellowed by age, was of kind that had not been manufactured for at least 40 years past. He could guess, however, that the book was much older than that. He had seen it lying in the window of a frowsy little junk shop in a slummy quarter of the town. Just what quarter he did not now remember, and had been stricken immediately by an overwhelming desire to possess it. Party members were supposed not to go into ordinary shops, dealing on the free market, it was called. But the rule was not strictly kept, because there were various things such as shoelaces and razor blades which it was impossible to get hold of in any other manner. He had given a quick glance up and down the street and then had slipped inside and bought the book for $2.50. At the time he was not conscious of wanting it for any particular purpose. He had carried it guiltily home in his briefcase. Even with nothing written in it, it was a compromising possession. The thing that he was about to do was to open a diary. This was not illegal. Nothing was illegal since there were no longer any laws. But if detected, it was reasonably certain that it would be punished, or rather it would be punishable by death, or at least by 25 years in a forced labor camp. Wow, that's pretty crazy for writing in a diary, but given the type of book that we're reading, it kind of makes sense. For those of you who are not aware, 1984 is a book set in a very dystopian world, and I guess the fact that there was somebody called Big Brother is watching on a poster, and there's telescreens that can look at you and hear you and see you at most times, I think that's a little bit of an immediate and obvious nod to the fact that it's set in an obviously dystopian universe. But if it was not obvious, that's totally okay. I'm just very into dystopian stuff, so I just happened to know it beforehand. But anyway, Winston fitted a nib into the pen holder and sucked it to get the grease off. The pen was an archaic instrument, seldom used even for signatures, and he had procured one, furtively and with some difficulty, simply because of a feeling that the beautiful, creamy paper deserved to be written on it with a real nib, instead of being scratched with an ink pencil. Actually, he was not used to writing by hand. Apart from very short notes, it was usual to dictate everything into the speak-write, which was of course impossible for his present purpose. That made no sense. I'm going to read that again. Apart from very short notes, it was usual to dictate everything into the speak-write, which was of course impossible for his present purpose. Speak-write. I'm assuming it's some kind of dictaphone or something you say and it writes for you automatically. He dipped the pen into the ink and then faltered for just a second. A tremor had gone through his bowels. To mark the paper was the decisive act. In small, clumsy letters, he wrote, April 14th, 1984. He sat back. A sense of complete helplessness had descended upon him. To begin with, he did not know with any certainty that this was 1984. It must be around about that date, since he was fairly sure that his age was 39 and he believed that he had been born in 1944 or 45. But it was never possible nowadays to pin down any date within a year or two. For whom, it suddenly occurred to him to wonder, was he writing this diary? For the future? For the unborn? His mind hovered for a moment round the doubtful date on the page, and then fetched up with a bump against the newspeak word, doublethink. I really lost my train of thought again, didn't I? I'm terribly sorry. This must be very annoying for some of you, and I do apologize, but I will hopefully get better with some time. I will try again, read that last paragraph, regarding the fact that he doesn't really know if it's the year 1984. Anyway, it must be round about that date, since he was fairly sure that his age was 39, and he believed that he had been born in 1944 or 45, but it was never possible nowadays to pin down any date within a year or two. For whom, it suddenly occurred to him to wonder, was he writing this diary? For the future? For the unborn? His mind hovered for a moment round the doubtful date on the page, and then fetched up with a bump against the newspeak word, doublethink. For the first time, the magnitude of what he had undertaken came to him. How could he communicate with the future? It was of its nature impossible. Either the future would resemble the present, in which case it would not listen to him, or it would be different from it, and his predicament would be meaningless. Let's do some page turning. That's pretty plasticky in its feel, but I'm guessing that's just the embossing and it makes a strange, cheap sound, but it is okay. It does look pretty cool with its barbed wire around the author name and the book name. And I'm guessing this is the pen. Okay, it's a fingerprint. I thought that was penguin for some reason. It looked like penguin. Anyway, let us proceed with... I think I'll read a couple more pages before... I think my phone runs out of storage, but let us proceed. Yep. For some time he sat gazing stupidly at the paper. The telescreen had changed over to strident military music. It was curious that he seemed not merely to have lost the power of expressing himself, but even to have forgotten what it was that he had originally intended to say. For weeks past he had been making ready for this moment, and it had never crossed his mind that anything would be needed except courage. The actual writing would be easy. All he had to do was transfer to paper the indeterminable... Oh, I read that utterly wrong. That was not even indeterminate. In fact, there was no D. Alright. All he had to do was to transfer to paper the interminable, restless monologue that had been running inside his head, literally, for years. So this is a long time coming, I see. At this moment, however, even the monologue had dried up. Moreover, his varicose ulcer had begun itching unbearably. He dared not scratch it, because if he did so, it would always become inflamed. The seconds were ticking by. He was conscious of nothing except the blankness of the page in front of him, the itching of the skin above his ankle, the blaring of the music, and a slight bruisiness caused by the gin. That's an awful combination. Suddenly he began writing in sheer panic, only imperfectly aware of what he was setting down. His small but childish handwriting straggled up and down the page, shedding first its capital letters and finally its full stops. This is what he wrote down. Sorry that it had to be abruptly cut. My storage ran out, so I will be now finishing up what he wrote in his diary. April 4th, 1984. Last night to the flicks. All war films. One very good one of a ship full of refugees being bombed somewhere in the Mediterranean. Audience much amused by shots of a great huge fat man trying to swim away with a helicopter after him. First, you saw him wallowing along in the water like a porpoise. Then you saw him through the helicopter's gun sights. Then he was full of holes. Then he was full of holes, and the sea round him turned pink. And he sank as suddenly as though the holes had let in the water. Audience shouting with laughter when he sank. Then you saw a lifeboat full of children with a helicopter hovering over it. There was a middle-aged woman with a little boy about 3 years old in her arms. Little boy screaming with fright and hiding his head between her, as if he was trying to burrow right into her, and the woman putting her arms around him and comforting him, although she was blue with fright herself. All the time covering him up as much as possible, as if she thought her arms could keep the bullets off of him. And the helicopter planted a 20-kilo bomb in among them. Terrific flash, and the boat went all to matchwood. Then there was a wonderful shot of a child's arm going up, 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 right into the air. A helicopter with a camera in its nose must have followed it up, and there was a lot of applause from the party seats. But a woman down in the prole seat of the house suddenly started kicking up a fuss and shouting they ought not to have showed it in front of kids. They didn't, it ain't right, not in front of kids, it ain't right. Until the police turned her around. I don't suppose anything happened to her, nobody cares what the proles say. Typical prole reaction, they never... Winston stopped writing, partly because he was suffering from cramp. He did not know what made him pour out this stream of rubbish. But the curious thing was that while he was doing so, a totally different memory had clarified itself in his mind, to the point where he almost felt equal to writing it down. It was, he realized now, because of his other incident, that he had suddenly decided to come home and begin this diary today. It had happened that morning at the ministry, if anything so nebulous could be said to happen. It was nearly 1100, and the records department, where Winston worked, they were dragging the chairs out of the cubicles and grouping them in the center of the hall opposite the big telescreen, in preparation for the 2 minutes hate. Alright guys, I will unfortunately be stopping this here out of fear that the video will naturally bring itself to a close because my storage is starting to run out. I will, however, be trying to clear the storage as best as I can to film the other videos that I will at some point. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'm so sorry that I was stuttering at times and unable to keep up with the reading and had to retrace my steps, and there was a bit of an editing and cuts involved. I omitted a certain few words from and tried not to read them, and there was a lot of noise in the background at one point, so yeah, I just didn't want to present a not so good recording with too much or too little going on. So anyway, I'm just gonna stop talking now, and I'm gonna end the video right here. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed my reading. I will refine this skill, this underdeveloped skill of mine, or rather this lack of a skill of mine, and I'll try to sharpen and hone it better for you guys and for myself as well. And hopefully I can get back into reading, and I can start reading more smoothly as well. It's been such a long time since I've read, but we'll definitely get back to it. Anyway, to sleep, have a restful and wonderful good night's rest, my friends. This was 1984 by George Orwell. It is a fascinating book from the few pages that we've read, and yeah, alrighty, take care you guys, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next video. Good night, sleep well, take care my friends, bye bye.